everyone, and welcome to Can I Just Say? From Common Room Radio, I'm Elizabeth Stevens.
I'm Daphne Olive, and today we're talking about The Favorite. And we're talking about The Favorite with the person who actually inspired me to watch it. We have with us Lindsay Romain from Nerdist.
Hello, thank you guys for having me.
I don't know if you knew that you were the person who inspired me.
I remember we talked about Yorgos a little bit, so...
We did after... Yeah, you've been kind of my guide through all of this. So wait, can I start by telling my story a little bit?
Yes, please.
First of all, this episode is dedicated to Christine Kippens because everyone in the world needs a friend where you say, oh my God, I'm dying to see this movie that I don't know anything about and you know nothing about. Let's go. And that friend says, yeah, let's do it.
That's awesome.
She's the best.
She's the best. And we had a really fun time watching it. And it was Lindsay, you were tweeting about it, and my friend Elizabeth Minkle, who has been a guest on Fathoms Deep, both tweeted about it. And you two do not generally have like a huge crossover of things that you're excited about. And that's what did it. I was like, okay,
nice.
Both Lindsay and Elizabeth are
Sure.
really excited about this thing. I'm just dying to see whatever it is.
Yeah, I had a similar, well, not a similar, but I had kind of a funny story in terms of like how I saw the movie, which was that my roommate and I, who's a writer, Britt Hayes, we had gotten tickets to see like an advanced screening. We were really excited about it because the trailer, I don't know if you guys have watched the trailer, but the trailer
so
is very
good.
It's very good and it's very strange, and we were just like, what the hell is this thing? So we bought these advanced tickets, and then like the day before we were supposed to go see it, she's in a Film Critics Association and she got a screener in the mail. So we had this debate, like, do we watch the screener because we're like dying to see this movie, or do we wait and see it at the screening that we bought tickets to? And we were like, fuck it, we're gonna watch the screener. So
Awesome.
We watched it 2 days in a row, and that's like a mark to me of a really good movie, is that like you're excited to watch it again the next day.
Yeah.
Like we watched it, we loved it, and then the next day, just the whole day, I was excited to see it again. So
I would have been.
Wow.
I would have been in the same place. Like Christine and I were kind of like, should we just walk right back in and watch it again? We were in a great screen. Like we were just in in the theater in downtown DC, and it was just like, it was packed. Everyone was reacting. Like I think a lot of people, it was the first week. So I think a lot of people had no idea what to expect. Yeah. And this is a film where there's just a lot of things where you're like, damn.
Yeah.
Totally.
I don't know that I'll be the dissenting opinion. I don't know that I would have wanted to see it, certainly not twice in a row, but even the next day, I think I would want to space it out a little bit, just because I found it visually dizzying sometimes, like physically. And I think I would have wanted just a little more space. And Daphne, you had mentioned to me when you watched it that you recommended it, but also that it was uncomfortable. Yes. I remember that was the word that you used. And so I had no idea what to expect, but I found it visually uncomfortable almost more than it was thematically uncomfortable, although there was certainly some of that too.
That's a fair point. I think maybe because I saw it on a tiny screen.
Yeah,
sure.
We watched it on our TV, which isn't huge. So, I was anxious to see how it actually looked on a larger screen, and seeing it with the crowd, knowing how funny it was, and like I wanted to experience that with a room full of people, and it was great.
It absolutely is great with a room full of people.
Yeah, it plays very well for sure.
So yeah, the funny thing is that I like delve deep into his this film is easy compared to his other films. Wait, Lindsay, how am I pronouncing his name? It's Yorgos Lanthimos.
Yorgos Lanthimos.
Yeah,
I believe. I think it might be. I don't know. I think maybe it's like Horgo. I don't know. I think with an accent.
Right. Sure, because he's Greek. Yes,
it's Greek.
That's very possible.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
But I think Yorgos Lanthimos is how I've heard most people say it.
So yeah, like pretty soon after, like Lindsay and I were talking about it, and then I watched To Kill a Sacred Deer. Is that the right
Killing
name?
of a Sacred Deer.
Killing a Sacred Deer, which is way more uncomfortable and amazing. I think I was messaging you during it. I was like, oh shit. And then I saw The Lobster, which is the one that I knew the name of beforehand. And
you still haven't seen Dogtooth, correct?
I know you warned me that might not be for me, but I think I'm going to have to. Like, I think that's it. I think I'm like sold on him completely, and I just want to see everything now, even if it's going to be hard for me.
Yeah, that was the first one I saw. And it's kind of funny because I feel like his films almost get more accessible as they go along. Because
yes.
And I haven't seen.
Wow.
I think,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Liz. This is like super mellow.
Like milquetoast comparatively. Okay. Interesting.
Just for like a brief summary of what Dogtooth is, it's about a family who has isolated their children. Like they aren't allowed to like leave their house, so they've grown up in total isolation. And when teens, it gets little flowers in the attic-y. It's very strange, and it's very, very uncomfortable.
Sure.
But it's so good. It's like messed up in the best way. And yeah, it's been funny to watch his films get more and more digestible. I think. Like I think sometimes, usually it's the opposite of that. So.
Yeah, this one's. If you've seen his other ones, this one feels downright mainstream.
Yes, and I think it kind of was mainstream. I was surprised by the reaction to this movie. People I didn't think would like it at all loved it. It seemed to be kind of an across the board. You at least like it somewhat. So
sure, yeah. I was always amused.
Mm-hmm.
Like even when I wasn't sure what was happening or how I felt about it, and even when I was like feeling. Okay, let's stop with the whip hands. Like, you're making me dizzy. Like, just chill out for just a second. Like, I see what you're doing, but maybe stop for just a minute. But even then, I was just, like, delighted isn't the right word. I wasn't that. But I was just amused. I was entertained.
You were entertained.
Yeah, I was compelled. It was great.
I mean, that's the thing that I'm fascinated with. Okay, I was going to start somewhere else with asking you all questions, but I think I'm going to start actually with the way he constructed this.
Sure.
I find him fascinating because he manages to really balance those two things where he's being very abstract. Like it's very, very constructed to the point where I think like he almost doesn't allow you to stay like, the way a lot of movies are like trying to like pull you in and just like pull at all of your emotional strings and like make you just feel like you're immersed in the emotions of the thing. He never lets you do that. And yet
he was always like undercutting it.
Yes, he was constantly undercutting.
This is ridiculous, isn't it? Like all the time. It was like he was saying that to me. It was so interesting.
So he does this fascinating thing where he's like super abstract, super pulling you out of the story constantly, but also telling such a good story that you are entertained. And that's what's fascinating to me. It's like I always felt like I had to choose between being entertained and being like super intellectually engaged. I feel like a lot of storytelling makes you choose one of those options. I think, in particular, like because I was young in the 80s and 90s, like I felt like those were really my two options. It was like intellectual film or entertaining film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's doing both, but I wanted to ask you all, like, how do you feel about the devices he used, especially the fisheye? Like, what did you, like, I still haven't answered this. Like, the farthest I got to this was like, I feel like he is kind of pushing you out and pulling you in at the same time, but I still haven't decided how I feel about these devices that he's using.
Well, so speaking to the fisheye and kind of what you're talking about, I think it's a little bit anachronistic, and I think purposely so. I think it's trying to tell this story in a way that modern audiences would kind of respond to it and reflect on it. So the fisheye almost makes me think of like an Instagram filter. Like it literally feels like
interesting.
That
like
is
almost like a young person if they were filming this movie, even back in the day. Maybe that's kind of how it would look. And then also like with the dancing scene with Rachel Weisz.
Oh my God, the dancing.
Which is intentionally like modern. I was gonna say, it reminded me a lot. I don't know if you guys have seen Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette, but it was similar to that, where it's kind of, obviously set in a very different time, but is using concepts and things that maybe will let audiences feel less like they're so on the outside of it and maybe a little bit more directly involved and speaking to it in conversation with it.
Wow, that's so interesting. See, the dancing for me, I mean, I loved it. And like definitely the theater I was in just all lost it. And for me, because I'm someone who has watched so much period film.
Yeah.
So for me, actually, the dancing in a way was almost like a really interesting, like not slap in the face, but like kind of like the bathing in the beginning, like someone had just thrown cold water on me, because it's like every time I kind of got comfortable with like, oh, we're at a period film, I know the rules here, then he would break those rules. So for me, actually, it made me, again, not uncomfortable in a bad way. Like I guess I should just say at the beginning, I'm pretty much going to say this every time I say it made me uncomfortable. I mean this as the highest compliment in this film, because like I never wasn't happy. I was just always like, oh wow, he's doing that, and that's making me like, it's putting me back in the place where I'm remembering that I'm watching a film. Like I can't, I was never allowed to sink into my usual comfort zone with period films, because he would do shit like that. And I feel like with the dancing, even it like started out kind of weird, and then he was just like, okay, now we're going into full on voguing. Like now it was like
I'm not sure if they're doing this on purpose or if they hired like maybe not the best choreographer and maybe rethought Martha. But then I was like, no, okay, you're absolutely doing this on purpose. Okay,
right. And over and over again, it would be like, we're going to go a little bit off script for your usual period film, and then we're going to be like, yeah, we are full on off script now. We're going to make this clear. But always gradually so. Like never, it was like always like hinting at being weird, and then like, no, really, we're not joking around this.
Yeah, I think it's purposely disorienting. Like it's trying, if I had to pick a word for it, it's like it's trying to subvert your expectations constantly in a lot of different ways. And especially I think it's, like you were saying, like it's, if you're familiar with period stories, it's kind of pulling the rug out from that.
Really is.
If you're not familiar with period stories, sometimes it still has a very period feel to it. So it, like anyone watching it is not going to feel, like you said, totally comfortable. And I think that it's by design made that way.
No, absolutely. And I think, even if you're not someone who's like spent a huge amount of time in period film, we all kind of know the rules of that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like there's certain types of film that even if it's not your type, you kind of, like Lindsay and I talk a lot about horror. I'm not a horror film person, and yet I know all the elements of it.
Right.
Because I have seen them, so it's like I am a period film person, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that for someone who's less so, you won't feel that. But what's mind-boggling to me, and I'm just going to keep saying this, and I don't have like, I maybe would have to do this podcast like a few years from now to really like have come up with a good opinion about this. Like, it is fascinating to me how much he like intentionally pushes you out of being in the story, but still makes it an engaging experience of being told a story.
Yeah. I think that's why I was confused when people seemed to love it so much, people that I didn't think would like it, because to me, I know that can be kind of isolating. Like, I love to be provoked and kind of, tossed around when I'm watching a movie, but I know some people don't like that. They want a straightforward experience or something that kind of holds their hand a little bit more. And so, that made me really surprised that people I wouldn't expect seemed very into it. And I was like, it's doing something right. I don't know what, but...
Yeah. That's what's so intriguing, is that it is doing something better than most films do.
Differently. I love the word disorienting. I think that's perfect. And I like, Lindsay, what you spoke to about the like anachronistic parts of it. And I didn't think about the fisheye lens at all, like as being something modern or Instagrammy. I love that take.
Yeah, me too.
But I definitely saw how he would use it to show, Daphne, you had tweeted about this earlier, like the power struggles. Like he would put these characters on the outside of the fisheye to make them like looming and high, and the queen or the favorite of the time, like right there in the center, where they're clearly the center and the person of power, but also like made so small, and there was also a whole lot of just these extreme long shots.
Yes.
Everybody's so far back, which we're just not used to. We have so much close-ups usually. And we got so few of those. And it, to me, reminded me a whole lot of watching silent films. Like everybody's way far back. We do a lot of these long following shots, and it was scored exactly like a silent film. Like So much so that it was like amusing, just like comical. And especially there was a scene when Rachel Weisz's character, Sarah, was walking down the hallway holding the lantern. Mm-hmm. And it was such Nosferatu vibes. I was like, what is going on? This is such a fun
when she was just like lit almost as a line of white in the black. Yeah.
So cool. And I haven't seen anything like that in such a long time, but it was just this like old school Hollywood vibes that I just hadn't seen anything drawing from that in such a long time. And I can see why the Oscars would love that. The Academy always loves that. So
yeah,
I thought it was a lot of fun.
Those scenes in the hallway too, when it's like very dark, it's just such a realistic, like it's, again, like we're saying, it's funny because it's anachronistic and there's certain things that feel kind of out of time, but then there are things like that make it feel very of its time. Just, they're not being a properly lit hallway. There's no light bulbs,
Yeah.
Stuff like that really sets you there.
That's true, because usually we compensate for that so much. We overfill and overlight. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. Well, but he's doing all of that deliberately, because it's not like it's not like a film where he chose only natural lighting, right? Like he's always making choices.
Yes.
And
not playing by his own rules. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No. Feel free to interrupt me. I interrupt everyone all the time. It's
fact.
It's totally true. I just get excited. It's like he does everything at once, and I do think that there are rules. I feel like I've watched it 3 times and I just haven't unlocked them yet. I think there are rules, and I feel like I've unlocked some rules, but not all of them. So like we do have this whole contrast of naturalistic and artifice, right? So that's like in lighting, in shooting, I still haven't figured out why, the same scene, sometimes you'll have a naturalistic looking lens and then the fisheye lens in the same scene, just like you cut back to the same people and suddenly they're in fisheye. And I'm not sure. Like after the first watch, I had this theory that the fisheye was about claustrophobia. Like I had remembered it mostly being on Abigail, and I had felt like originally that it had to do with Abigail. I mean, I feel like the primary aspect of Abigail's story is about being under pressure.
Yes. Well, and also in like living, what do they call it? Like living in a fishbowl? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of that too.
Well, and that is always an element in period films about palaces and royal intrigue. Yes. The whole idea of a fishbowl, actually, you're right, is a huge element in how those stories are told.
Absolutely.
Because there's always the thing that everything is public.
Yes. And I definitely felt that with this movie, that there was no real privacy. And because I think of the fisheye lenses and because of the story and just and the intimacy, I always had this feeling that I wasn't supposed to be there, that I was like intruding. Like most movies, you feel like you're invited. Like you feel, I don't know, welcome. And I did not feel welcome in this movie.
No, that's totally true. I said that to a friend of mine when I was watching last night. I said what the fisheye is doing is it's distancing you from the thing, but also making you feel like you're a voyeur in a really interesting way. Yeah,
that's a really good point. Yeah, like you're looking through the little
exactly, like you're looking through a keyhole.
Or a keyhole or something. Absolutely.
Cool. Now I want to go back and watch, because I don't think I noticed, like what you were saying, Daphne, that in the same scene sometimes it's different cameras.
It is sometimes.
Now I kind of want to go back and like puzzle that out.
Yeah, I did notice that because it was throwing me too.
We might have to, like, a few months or a year from now, we'll do part 2 of this podcast where we maybe have unlocked some of these things.
Sure.
Like, 3 watches was not enough for me. I definitely...
Well, it's funny going off of that, because I've seen other people make this comparison, and at first I didn't really get it, but the more we talk about it and the more I think about it, I've heard people compare it to, like, a Stanley Kubrick movie, which is... especially Barry Lyndon, which when we were talking about natural lighting, he lit that whole movie naturally, trying to take advantage of like the period time that it was set in. But his movies all feel like puzzles also.
Yes.
And people debate, the rules and the logic and the disorientation constantly. And I feel like this is definitely one of those types of movies where there's probably so many deliberate camera choices and hints within the frames that would maybe kind of shine light on what maybe some secret meaning or something. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I do think it's a movie people will talk about in that way. As
yes. And yet it's entertaining at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I think Kubrick's movies all are also, they're just like, there's kind of a front, like there's a straight watch to them, and then there's like a deeper watch to them, sure. Purposely so. So I'm just curious if this is something like that, you know?
Well, I think it is. I mean, again, you both know where I stand on the whole intent thing. I think it does seem to me like this man is actually brilliant, and there are all of these things that are intentional. I think even if it wasn't his intent, the content is there for right. that kind of reading. And I feel like I've only started to begin to get there. So yeah, I'm trying to decide which things I want to talk about first. I really want to talk about gender, because I feel like the question the most people asked me my opinion on was about the scene with the throwing the fruit. And I think I have an answer for that now. I do have an answer for that. I do.
Okay. Because that was definitely like, okay. Okay.
I feel like because I ended up like tweeting about it so much and recommending it to so many people, and I feel like a lot of people came back to me. So we're like, so that scene. So should we start there? That's a weird place to start. Yeah, I feel like we should.
A weird place to start, but okay.
It's a weird place to start because it's not talking about the relationships of our main characters, but it is talking about gender. So this ties into this whole thing, the thing that we were talking about naturalistic and not naturalistic. And I think that one of the things that on my first watch really hit me, but then kind of deepened with each watch, was the fact, that the men were, so done up with the wigs and the makeup and the this and the that, and that the women were not. The women had very beautiful outfits, but that they were not done up like that. And so my second watch, like the first watch, I was mostly just like having this crazy film wash over me, and it was amazing. And the second watch, I came in wanting to understand the gender stuff, like understand the absurdity, because we have like the two big absurd things are the duck races and the throwing the fruit. And the throwing the fruit in particular hit me because of the timing of it. The throwing the fruit happens juxtaposed exactly with the moment when Abigail makes her big move. Like when she decides to throw away her morals, and she had that whole, conversation with herself about whether she was going to throw away her morals and what would her morals do for her if she ended up just selling her ass on the street anyway. And that was the moment. It was that she gave Sarah the tea, the poison tea. And then we have the cutting back and forth between Abigail going towards Harley, where Harley is, throwing all this fruit. Sarah on her horse. Exactly. Both of them are completely centered in the frame. So we have the comparison of the two of them going in a direction. And for Abigail, it's the direction of now becoming the most powerful person. And for Sarah, it's the direction of like, falling from that space.
Yeah.
And we have Harley throwing fruit. We have all these men just like doing this bizarre whatever. And what it meant for me is that, we have this whole thing in this film about perceived power and actual power. And the men, for the most part, are absurd. They have no power. This is a film about three women. This is a film about a power struggle amongst women. The men are there, and they're nominally the power, right? They're nominally the parliament and the power structure.
Sure.
But they aren't. They're
just... like the execution of the power. But,
right.
Yeah. Not the word.
Not even really so much even like they're really just playing at power. They're they're just, dressing up in their wigs and like yelling at each other in Parliament. But all of the things that are actually happening are happening amongst these three women. And they're the ones who are facilitating. And Abigail, while Harley's like throwing fruit and being absurd, like they're just bored. Like there's a class element to this too, of course, but they're just like in court with really nothing to do.
Sure.
Yeah, it's interesting too, the makeup comment that you brought up. I remember listening, I think it was Emma Stone gave an interview where she said like, not only are the women dressed down, they're not wearing makeup at all. Like
right.
they aren't. That was a purposeful choice. Of none of them are wearing makeup except for, the scene where Anne wears the badger makeup or whatever.
Right.
Well, and then Abigail wears the badger makeup at the end.
Yes. Yeah. At the end when they're in like party situations, but throughout most of the movie, they're not wearing any makeup at all. Because they don't have to. And that goes back to kind of what you were saying, is that like women, I'm not dissing makeup, but kind of, socially, women feel the need to wear makeup because whatever, that's kind of just what society has kind of foisted on us, is look pretty. And
well, it's one of the tools that has been handed to us for empowerment.
Exactly. And in this situation, they don't have to, because they're the ones in control. It's almost like a matriarchy versus a patriarchy.
Which is very cool.
Yeah. And so it just shows you that like when that dynamic is shifted, who has to look a certain way, because that's just kind of what power has done for those different systems. So, yeah.
Well, and the text has an actual moment of that, because we have is it Marsham? When he goes to try to woo Abigail, he puts on, he dresses like Harley. Harley clearly
dressed him. That confused me, by the way, at first. I was like, wait, who was that? Okay. Yeah.
Harley did a makeover for his buddy.
Yeah. Which would happen
she's all that. Oh my God.
Well, and then you have the moment where Abigail takes the wig off of him and puts it on her own head. And I feel like that's really like putting an exclamation point on the fact that the women are not doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, she kind of emasculates.
She's all about emasculating him, and I love it.
It's so good. Also, kind of a funny, this is just a weird random, because I'm, a pop culture writer. I have all this random useless trivia, but that's the guy who plays Masham is Taylor Swift's boyfriend in real life, and Emma Stone is good friends with Taylor Swift, so I just kept thinking about that.
Oh my God, okay.
Yeah.
That all works. I see that. Yeah.
Yeah, messing with your friend's boyfriend.
Right, and we all benefited from the fact that they had this, this friendship that really added, like those scenes are so much fun.
They are, yeah.
They really are. That's a good point.
Right? They're weird as hell. Like the scene of
them. Weirdly relaxed when they should not be. Like they're awkward as hell, but also chill. Like
talking about absurdity, the scene where they're just like outside and just like beating each other up is so funny.
So weird.
It's so funny and weird. And
I know.
I don't know how to put that exactly. It does work. And then also it's so anti, like, I don't know how to put it. Anti-kink shaming. It's just so like, whatever. Like these two people are into each other. They're having fun. Everything's fine.
You need to watch his other movies. He's like kink embracing.
Kink embracing. That's what it is. Anti-kink shaming. Kink embracing. It's so kink embracing. It's so like, what, you want me to chase you around and smack you a little? All right.
I feel like this whole movie is pretty kink embracing.
Oh yeah,
you're probably right about that.
I love it a lot for that. I really do. Not gonna lie, it really was very satisfying for me on that front. So yeah, I just think that there is this. And there's little moments. Like I tweeted a GIF. There's a GIF where Harley early on just goes up to Sarah, and he's so much taller than her, and even more so with that wig, and he's so giant, and he's like and he's like looming over her, and it is completely clear in that moment who is demonstrating power and who has power.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So yeah, well, Elizabeth knows this about me. Politics and the plays of power is something I really enjoy in storytelling. If we're talking about power now, let's start talking about Sarah and Abigail, and in particular the shooting scenes.
Oh, okay.
The thing that relates to this thing I was saying about demonstration of power and true power, I feel like the second shooting scene actually had an illustration of that between the two of them. When Sarah shoots Abigail.
She fires a blank. Yeah.
She fires a blank. Exactly. Mm-hmm. That she was exerting power without having to actually.
First of all, Yes, I hear what you're saying. I'm sorry. I cut off your beautiful metaphor. Now I feel bad. But anyway.
I can continue to say she was exerting power without needing to actually have the thing that would be the thing that you would think would be the power is the bullet.
Right.
And the fact that she didn't have a bullet in there was actually a better way of exerting the power. And that was a metaphor for women being the ones who are the seat of power in this story. Because they're not where we would expect it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous. No, my question was just that I assumed, but I didn't do a very close read right at the beginning with the first shooting scene because I didn't realize that they were going to keep on coming back to it, I suppose. Sure. But my read was that Abigail definitely knew how to shoot the whole time, right? Yes. She's not actually learning anything. She's just doing the thing where, okay, I just wanted to make sure that I had followed that.
I mean, that was my reading correctly.
As well. Yes. Yeah. No, well, that was Abigail all the way through. Like she was always doing that.
Brilliant.
But, yes. I think it would have worked both ways. So,
right.
Yeah. But that's good. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I liked that the second one that they were shooting a suit of armor again. Like the second shooting scene was really just like a women's power moment. So they were shooting not birds, but a suit of armor.
Uh-huh.
Was it this? Oh, and it was the third one when the power shifts. The third one is when we hear the shooting.
Is that when we get the blood splatter?
Yes. So we start by hearing the shooting already when Abigail and Anne were having so much fun together. And Anne's bizarrely singing off with her head. That was weird.
The sound editing on this movie is phenomenal. Is that one of the Oscar nods for sound?
Oh,
it's got to be, right?
I don't know. There's 10.
I tried to look up the 10, and I couldn't find it easily. So I just figured one of you ladies would have it. I'm sorry. I should have looked harder. But I just assumed, but one of them, if one of them's not sound, then it's a problem because
it's
the sound was
though. If there's 10, it's got to be one of them.
Yeah, it might be. Also, the nominations this year are just completely insane. So I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't get.
Are they? I haven't really been keeping track, to be honest.
It's a whole mess.
Oh no, that's too bad.
That's a whole.
I haven't kept track in a long time because I feel like every year people are like, "Oh God, here we go again." So I've just kind of stopped paying attention to anything but the dresses. To be honest,
I just
bad film student.
I just looked it up. It does not have a sound nomination.
No way!
Wow.
Yeah, it has some technical ones, but cinematography, production design, costume, film editing, but not sound. So
that is shocking.
Yeah, it's like Bohemian Rhapsody or something ridiculous that has.
Of course. No, of course it is. Yeah.
The editing categories.
Black Panther.
I know, but see, I'm still happy though because The Favorite and Roma were the two were nominated for the most. So I'm just I'm just choosing to be happy about that because I love this movie so much. All right, so let's. I mean, I could talk about the gender thing forever, but I also, as everyone knows, I love relationships. So I would really love to talk about that. Who would you all like to start with? I pretty much want us to discuss every combo of the three women. So do you all have a place you would like to start?
Maybe if we start with Sarah and Anne, because I feel like that's where the movie starts. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sure. Well, and I feel like to start there, I would like to start just addressing Anne.
Okay.
I thought, God, they did beautifully, first of all. And I love Olivia
Colman.
Thank you. God, she's extraordinary in everything.
Yeah.
But in this in particular, and again, the way they always put her in the center of the frame and with this fisheye, they did such a beautiful job of making her so isolated and lonely and unknowable and untouchable.
Yeah.
And I mean, to see the relationship with Sarah as being one that was so desperate, I suppose. And then the relationship with Abigail being so surprising was a gorgeous juxtaposition.
See,
I agree.
I feel like I have two things. Like one, I think that Anne is a really fascinating take on, again, like the idea that the monarch is isolated and, the person who in theory is most in power, but also completely exists at the whims of the world around them and their responsibility is, I feel, that's a story that gets told all the time. And yet they managed to make it different, which is fascinating to me. I had thought that the 17 dead children, I mean, this is just so heartbreaking. My original take on it was that she had been trying to get pregnant as a queen that whole time, which is heartbreaking to think. I mean, it's like, sounds like the stuff of torture. The idea that you would just keep miscarrying and keep trying to have children. I don't believe historically she was queen during all of those miscarriages and stillbirths, but I don't care. Like, I think for the sake of the story, that is our experience of it, is that she was in a position where she, you know, this is a period film trope, like the idea that the monarch who can't have an heir, right? But usually that's a man.
Yeah, and the worst part too is that in real life it wasn't just miscarriages and stillbirths. Some of them lived young. For several years and just died very young. So it's extra.
Well, and she did say that. She said some of them were with me for a short time. God, that was heartbreaking.
She said some of them were born as blood, some of them born without breath, I think she said, and then some of them stayed with me. I really noted this the last time I watched it, and some of them stayed with me for a short time.
Yeah.
Like, she had special language for how she lost them all.
Yeah. It's awful.
Yeah, it is truly awful. So even if she wasn't actually the queen trying to create an heir at that time, it's still, it's overwhelming just to think about that, you know.
Just from a human perspective.
Right, just from a human perspective.
Right.
And it's so telling that that Abigail uses the bunnies. I mean, we have to talk about where we think Abigail's intentions are in the beginning, but Abigail either appreciates the bunnies or uses the bunnies to connect with Anne, and Sarah won't even touch them or doesn't remember their names, which means she doesn't remember Anne's dead children's names.
Right. It's the bunny thing is such a cool visual just metaphor throughout the movie. First of all, I thought that was a really clever way of showing Anne's, you know, kind of giving an image to her grief, really, in a way that I think maybe would have been hard to visualize or to really get a concept of, maybe without that. Obviously, it's still tragic and horrible to think of dead children, but just also knowing like that she's replaced them with these animals, it's just awful.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, to go to your question about where her intentions really are, I never for one second doubted that they loved each other. Like, I really thought that her love came from a pure place.
Oh, and yeah. Let's talk about that. I think I meant to say Abigail in terms of the bunnies, but yeah, let's talk about their relationship, because I think that there are a million ways to read their relationship.
Yeah, and I kind of went through all the different cycles the first time I watched it, thinking, you know, oh, this is just opportunistic for her, or she likes the power that comes with this, and, you know, this is just a sacrifice she makes. And by the end of it, and by seeing it more than once, I think their love is a very genuine thing. I don't think that she's doing it just for her own self-service. I think there's a bit of that, but I don't think that that's her kind of driving motive for why she's close to her. And I do, you know, knowing that they were childhood friends, and there's obviously a lot of fucked upness.
I was going to say, I don't even know if you can look at it so healthy. Purely as that. Yeah, because it's certainly not healthy. And because there were so few avenues to that kind of power, like you really can't separate it. Right. I have a hard time thinking.
Okay, we're still talking about Sarah and Anne, yes?
Sarah and Anne, yeah. I have a hard time thinking that without Anne being queen, the two of them would be living in a cottage together somewhere, going about their domestic life. Like, that doesn't seem like that's how that would have gone down. Well, I think that Sarah would have married some. Well,
she did.
Lord.
She did.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So, like, would they have been carrying on an affair if Anne was not queen?
So that's what I was going to say. I think maybe the sexual element of it comes from the fact that Anne's queen and widowed, and, without child. And I think maybe that kind of sprung up through that circumstance. I don't think
through Anne's need.
Interesting. So it's like a way of just serving her need as a friend who genuinely loves her, but who is not necessarily sexually attracted to her.
Oh, yeah. I think Sarah's absolutely sexually attracted to Anne.
Yeah, I think
you know this because she gets so jealous. The jealousy isn't just about power.
Right. I do think that they're both queer characters. I did read it that way, honestly. And that maybe that's just the only way that kind of love can manifest in this time is, secretly and
sure, of course.
And it's complicated. But I do think that the sexual nature and my theorizing on it probably didn't start until Anne's husband died. But I don't know.
Right. I don't know when it started with them, although they were friends from a very young age, obviously. Mm-hmm. I did ask myself this question. I do see them. I mean, again, it is what is fascinating about these relationships of these three women is that the like living in a hut somewhere or a cabin or whatever scenario isn't really relevant because they do live in a world. Yeah. They live in a world, and that's what's fascinating about their lives is that they live in a world where the personal and the questions of power are completely intertwined with each other. And I don't know if there's really much point in positing what would be without the power because it's such an integral part of who they are. It's an integral part of who they are, who they were meant to be. You have to remember Anne is a younger sibling as a royal. So she was a person who always knew there was a risk or an opportunity, depending on how you see it, of being queen, but it wasn't a foregone conclusion. But she was always raised to be this. There was no part of Anne's life where she wasn't raised to be potentially a monarch, right?
Right.
And that's what's fascinating. Again, I want to talk about. I just want to say one thing about Abigail in relation to this, but then I want to talk more about Anne and Sarah. Is that that's part of what's interesting about the story is that that Sarah and Abigail are cousins. So that's part of the class. Like, again, this is very much a period film trope of the fallen woman, not fallen because of sex, but fallen because she had lost her class status. So we have to remember that Sarah and Abigail were of a similar status and that basically the choices of their parents are what put each of them in the place they are at the beginning of this film. So, like, again, none of these people ever lived without some sense of status and power, different for each one of them, but that was always part of their lives. I think it's a moot point kind of to try to divorce them of that. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I definitely, the second watch, I really wanted to focus on what I think is going on with Anne and Sarah in terms of love. And I think the really telling point is that Sarah basically sabotages all of this by really like becoming confrontational with Abigail when Abigail has no power yet. It's just about the sex. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens is that Abigail then lashes back towards Sarah because Sarah has endangered her life. Like Sarah's like, you will be out. And that's when Abigail really starts plotting and decides to like put aside her morals. So, and that was based purely on, I mean, again, I'm sure that Sarah was worried because Abigail is clearly very, very manipulative and sneaky.
Right. Well, and jealousy can mean so many different things too. Like, and some of it I think that we can't unpick and can't know. But not just necessarily, I mean, Sarah has so much to lose. She's running the country. Like that's how I saw it.
Right.
Like she was the one.
Right. I'm not sure that Sarah's running the country because she wants power, though. I think it has more to do with duty in her case. Like,
she said that she loved the country more than she loved Anne, basically, is what she said. She didn't exactly say it, but she certainly implied it.
So I see their situation as analogous to the way they met. You know, that they tell this story about how that boy was like, had pinned Anne down, was spitting on her face, and Sarah saved her. I see Sarah running the country because
like as a favor,
because she knows that Anne is incapable of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I see her as burdened by that. She's tired. I see, like, the way that I now see their relationship. Like, sure, I'm sure there's some element of her that enjoys it, because she's certainly fun for us to see when Sarah's like, I will, throw you to the dogs, or whatever it is she says, like that moment in the beginning when she's like walking down the hall and like barking out orders to everyone and threats together. But my overall sense of this is that Sarah actually loves Anne, and she's doing the duty that she both feels a calling to, but mostly feels like she has to do because everyone else is going to fuck it up.
Yeah.
And that I don't, I that's what I see her as. I see her as, in that couple, again, they're playing a trope to us, like, where Anne's constantly like, be with me, stop going away, don't be so busy. That's a stereotypically feminine role. And we have Sarah playing the stereotypically masculine role of, I have duty, I have to go to work, I have to take care of business. And I find it interesting that they played those stereotypically gender roles so strongly. And I think that is supposed to show us things about Sarah, that she's about duty. Like, she loves Anne, but duty is more important to her.
Well, and especially when you consider Harley into this situation, who I think wants to kind of do these more, I don't really know politics super well, so I don't know what his exact motives are, but, he seems to be a little bit more wanting to kind of erect these big changes, and Sarah's more about, no, this is what works. This is like what, has been working for us, and this is what we need to keep doing. I don't think she's a radical so much as she is, wanting to keep things in order.
Well, they represent, like, just for like a politics moment, like, they represent different interests. Like, she represents the cities. She represents basically, like, in our world, she would be, kind of like the like pro-war Democrats. Like, she represents the cities who will benefit from war, and he represents the landholders. He represents the aristocracy who own land. And so that's why their motivations are based completely on representing their constituencies.
Right. That's a good way.
So it's not, I don't know if they're like either of them is particularly radical. They're just each coming from a different perspective about what's good for the country.
Okay, good.
Or their constituency. Maybe not the country even necessarily, but like how they view the country.
Got it. Okay. That's a good history lesson for me.
I don't know. Again, I don't know the history there. I'm just like, actually mostly, it's funny.
No, you're
kind of extrapolating.
I keep saying like, I keep watching this and going, I really should research who are the Tories and who are the Whigs, and like really get it. But I'm just saying, like, within the world of the film, it's very clear that like each of them are just coming from different points of view. I actually don't think that Harley is bad person. I mean, he's an ass, but I think he is trying to represent his part of the country in an honorable way. Or
got it.
Okay, not honorable, but you know what I mean. Like, he's trying to do his best for them. He's not a particularly honorable person, but who is
totally, and that's very kind of good to know, because I guess the way I kind of extrapolated it, not really being so aware of that stuff, is just that he seems like he wanted to shake things up a little bit more than she did. But you're right, they're probably just representing different things, but it still creates this clash where he's trying to change something, she's trying to keep it the same or keep it in this like order. So in a lot of ways she's having to deal, it almost feels like she's having to deal with all of these just like children running in and messing up life. Not just with Harley, but with Abigail also.
Right. Sure. I mean, I think that's how Sarah would definitely define her situation.
Yeah, totally. It's like, I had things under control until you people showed up.
Right. Well, and she had Harley under control until Abigail showed up.
Right. Like, he was still probably, nipping at her heel a little bit, but she could at least kind of, she knew how to shut him down. And then Abigail came and nothing was the same.
Right. Well, and Abigail said, like, in that post-fruit throwing moment, he's like, wait, I thought you were on our side. And she's like, I'm on my side, dude.
Yeah.
That's true. Since you ladies have seen it more than I, can you talk to me about your read of Sarah dancing with Harley and then Anne's jealousy and that reveal?
She was not dancing. She was dancing.
She wasn't. Who was she dancing with?
No, she was dancing with what's his name?
The Masha Smith.
Yeah, Mr. Abigail. I will just call him Mr. Abigail from now on.
I call him Mr. Taylor Swift. So.
Mr. Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Oh, poor dear. He's always Mr. some woman.
That's fine. It's Masham, Samuel Masham.
I love it. Okay. Okay, I did have trouble early on in the film differentiating between those two guys. So whenever they had them all done up, I was like, oh, hell, who's who?
Yeah, can we just take a moment to appreciate Olivia Colman and her face in that moment where we see her for like way longer than you have to look at an actor's face usually, and how many emotions she goes through?
Yeah. Every emotion, I would argue.
I know. It's incredible. Like with barely moving, like mostly just whatever it is she's doing with her eyes. Like just she focuses, she unfocuses, she just, it's incredible.
Yeah.
That scene is definitely tricky because I think the first time I saw it, I didn't really understand why she was so quick to be, or not so quick to be. It kind of took her a while to be upset about what was going on. And I'm not sure.
Because that's right before the reveal of their sexual relationship, right?
Yes, right.
That's how they reveal, right?
But okay, I can tell you my take on it because that was also one of the moments where I like really focused in and tried to come up with an opinion on.
Sure.
I think there are a lot of things going on, which is amazing, and I think that again, Olivia Colman's performance allows. When I say I said so many emotions, and and Lindsay, I think you said all of the emotions. What's beautiful about that is I really do think there's room for different viewers to assign different experiences and emotions to what they're watching going on in her face. There's a few elements that could be influencing her emotional state. One is that Harley just did point out that the people are angry with her for the tax, for the land tax. Yeah. And Sarah pushed that down her throat. So like this is part of Sarah. This is a part we haven't talked about Sarah and Anne's relationship, is that Sarah basically just says, you will do this, you will do that, you will do this. Yes, we're meeting on Thursday and you're going to do this then. Right? And that is, obviously an arrangement both of them to some extent had agreed to up until when Abigail shows up.
Right.
So Harley had done that, and I think that's why she slaps Sarah's face, is because like, dude, you undermine, like, yes, I do give you all this power, but you made a choice that was bad for me and put me in a bad position, and I didn't know until someone told me at a ball, and that sucks for me.
Yeah, and then it's kind of almost making a mockery, maybe she thinks of that by doing this ridiculous dance. Yeah, that's
right. Well, and also there's just like, it is okay to love someone and also be envious of like them being younger or them being more physically able. Or
I think that was my first read.
That was mine also. But that she's, Sarah's this more young and beautiful. Or I don't know if she's younger, but she's more able-bodied, more beautiful, can kind of have fun with a younger man and do these things that Anne can't really socially do.
Right.
Exactly.
Which was made, do you want to go fast? So beautiful. And
that's how she made up with her. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the amazing thing is that Anne can be, when watching Sarah dance, she can simultaneously be envious of Sarah for her ability to dance and be young and all of that, and envious of the man who is dancing with her.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's what makes that so complicated. It's so amazing.
Right.
I feel like the movie is just loaded with stuff like that, where it's like, it's not necessarily ambiguous, but it's layered. I think that's what Olivia Colman is playing in that scene by going through all this emotion is probably every single situation in which this could be a good or a bad thing for her.
Yeah. Well, and I think that she could also be in awe and in love with Sarah watching her dance.
Yeah.
Too. I think that she gets that at first. Like at first she's just delighted to watch her dance before everything else takes over.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and again, that's what's so beautiful is I think ambiguous. I love ambiguity in storytelling, and I'm not even sure if ambiguous like encompasses enough here, because it has crossed a line to being so human that it's so complex that it's not necessarily a question of ambiguity, but a question of like all of the shit that we're capable of experiencing at the same time. And that's how we actually work, is that like, I feel like a lot of stories want to make us boil down an emotional state to like one or two things, but that's not how we act. That's not how humans work. That's not how we actually experience emotions. Like, we can look at someone and feel all the love in the world and all the envy in the world for that same person in that one moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so few stories manage to get us to that place where we're experiencing that vicariously through a character while looking at their face. But this story did that.
And it's the same thing that we were talking about with Sarah, which is that, there's both advantageousness and, dutifulness.
Exactly.
Right. We don't have to choose.
Yeah, there's a lot. The dutifulness sounds weird to say, but there's a lot of it could be all of those things at once, and it's like there's no one right read on that situation.
Well, and I think of her on the other side of the door with Anne too, when she yells, "I will never lie to you," or something, and that is what love is. I will always tell you the truth.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the scene where it really cemented it to me that, like, oh yeah, no, she truly does love her.
Yeah, she might not love her well all the time, but she does love her.
Yeah, and it's almost like a marriage where it's like, you and her honesty. I mean, going back to the bunny thing too that we were talking about, like, yeah, she doesn't put up any showery of liking these animals. She doesn't like them. She thinks they're weird. And she doesn't lie about it.
She thinks it's macabre. She said this is macabre. She's not wrong.
No, it is. And I think that to me is also like a really big demonstration of love, is just not bullshitting the person about how you feel about something, like that. So, and that shows the main difference between her and Abigail, who pretends to like them but clearly doesn't at the end when she tries to kill one. So... or almost, I don't know if she's trying to kill it, but, clearly she's screwing around with it.
Right. She's enjoying the fantasy of killing it.
Yes, exactly. So she probably does feel the same way that Sarah does about them, but she fakes it. So
lies for her advantage. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, and she doesn't. Let's get to Abigail in a second. I want to talk about one of my favorite lines is when they are riding and Anne is complaining about Sarah, and she's like, "You're awful," and Sarah's like, "But sometimes, every once in a while, I'm delightful. Let's focus on those days." I was just like, "Yep, that was it for me." I was just like, "Yep, that is marriage. That is exactly marriage. I love you. You drive me crazy most of the time, and every once in a while, you're awesome, and I will focus on those days."
And I feel like that's what works. Like, that is kind of a successful, relationship and marriage. Is that
that's how I do
it. Different parts. Yeah, for sure. I also heard, going off of that, someone I follow, I want to say it's actually Louis Vertel from
oh my God, I love him.
He's very funny, and I think he referred to Rachel Weisz in this movie as like a Wednesday Addams character, where she's just she's so like, dry-witted and, no nonsense, doesn't lie, very like just even-faced as she says these things.
Sure.
Yeah. She's so my girl. I love her.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Abigail and the bunnies. I mean, and Abigail in a larger sense, but I'm about to ask a question and I'm answering it beforehand. But I like, with the mind that there is complexity, I still want to ask the question, like, on the day when Sarah sends Abigail in and they play with the bunnies, like, do you think that was all artifice, or do you think that some part of Abigail, actually enjoyed that day? Like, so is there some aspect of Abigail that actually enjoyed Anne's company, or was it all?
I have a lot of feelings about this, because the first time I watched the movie, I was a little bit wine drunk, and which is again, like we were saying before, a very fun way to watch this movie. And sometimes I feel like
certainly how I'm talking about it.
I think sometimes when I'm a little bit wine drunk, I see things that maybe I wouldn't, totally sober. And I once the movie was over, I felt very strongly that Abigail did have feelings for Anne. Maybe not romantic feelings, but I think she did enjoy that. She's a lonely character also, and this is a chance for friendship and for companionship, even if it's not, again, a healthy relationship. Yeah, I don't think that if she fully like loathed her and hated her, that would have been happening. I don't think
it's possible to grow up in that time and not have adoration for your monarch. Like, she had to have that at least.
It's the same as sleeping with like a rock star or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
to some extent, there's that idea too, where it's like, yes, it's a selfish thing, but it's also there is adoration is the best thing that I can come up with, and that this has to be an idol of someone. It's something that someone you've always looked up to, and it at the very least expands her world in a way that's very meaningful to her.
I mean, and we see her, she seems to kind of luxuriate in the attention that she gets from her. And so
of course.
I don't think that you don't have those feelings, and you don't have that kind of just feeling of contentness if you don't like the person in any way. So I don't know. I did, and especially that bunny scene. I think she was having a good time. They're sitting on the floor eating cake and like drinking and playing with bunnies. Like, who wouldn't have fun with that?
Seems like fun to me. Yeah.
And day one with 17 bunnies is very different from like month 6 with 17 bunnies, right?
Totally.
Or year, whatever. I mean, time has passed.
I don't know what the time was on this.
Well, they're very unclear. But Anne, I think Anne has had more than one stroke by the end. Because she's actually in worse shape at the very end than she is after what seems to be the first.
Olivia Colman being so good, absurdly good.
I know. And she does seem, in the earlier scene when all the ministers are in, she seems to have had a stroke. And at the last scene, she seems to have had possibly another stroke. Like she's lost more body functionality. So I think a lot of time has passed. So yes, that is a lot of time to treat bunnies like they are actually children. I get it. Yeah. Again, and the fascinating thing is like I really enjoy Abigail. I enjoy all three of them, but I really enjoy Abigail. And to be honest, if every single moment of everything she did was completely opportunistic, I would not blame her in a second. I mean, again, we have the scene where she says like we know her being in the kitchens in the palace is like much better than what a lot of women experience. So that's already
what she had been experiencing until that point. Yeah.
Right. And we have the scene in the carriage where we already have a guy like, basically just jacking off while looking at her.
Yeah.
Like we do get, as powerful and as forceful as she is and how much she seems to be in control of what she's doing and in control of men, we do start off with this sense of, of just like the basic threat that women live under.
Yeah. Well, she was raped also, right? Or at least forced.
Right, sold, and she's been through a lot. Yeah. I mean, again, we don't know whether to believe her stories necessarily, but we know that her stories are at the very least telling us stories that are situations that women end up in when they don't have the power of class to protect them.
Yeah, and I don't know that she would have been half as cunning if that stuff didn't happen to her. I mean, she's a survivor in every possible way. And so, I agree with you. Even if she was doing it purely selfishly, which, I mean, she clearly is to some degree, I think that's justified. More than justified.
Right, exactly. And there is, the moments that's fascinating to me is... And I don't know if this is her just fucking with Sarah or if I still haven't decided if I take this at face value or if she's fucking with Sarah, is when Sarah comes back after the whole poisoning and all of that. And she says to her, well, we can just relax and be friends now. Like, I've taken care of this. I've taken care.
Genuine.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because, and it's, what makes it seem the most genuine is when she says something about her being happily married and Abigail does that like total scoff of disgust about that comment, which is like the best moment ever. I think I will be devoted. I mean, I already liked Emma Stone, but I will be devoted to her forever for that one moment where she's like, just snorts and you're just like, fuck that. I don't give a shit about that.
She has two moments like that. That snort is perfect. And then also the scene when she's walking to the carriage and Anne has the line about liking when she puts her tongue in her and she just turns around and gives that like smirk.
Oh,
it's the best ever. That was like my Facebook cover photo for
Okay, can we also take a break for that line?
That was.
I am not joking. That was the
so
gayest
hard.
line I have ever heard, and I like listened to that line, and I was like, again, I was with our friend Christine, and I like grabbed her arm, and I was like, "Fuck! I cannot believe she just said that the way she said that." I am so in love with this line. Like to this day, I am in love with this. It was so.
Yeah.
It was just so casual and perfect. I loved it so much.
You know, the best thing is I saw someone tweet that line out of context. Like, I didn't even know it was related to The Favorite. I had just seen that on Twitter, like, the day before. So when it showed up in the movie and I realized, I was like, oh my God, that's what that person was talking about.
Best line ever. I have that GIF and I just keep it on my phone and I will never use it because I wish it, you know, when you have those lines in a movie that you wish you could unremember, like you could forget the line so you could experience it for the first time again.
Yes.
I wish I could experience that line for the first time again, and I will never, well, again, hopefully no one's listening to this without having watched the film, but I would like to never, ever steal that experience from someone of watching it for the first time.
Totally. That's actually part of that line, and you know, several other moments are why I was excited to see it with an audience the day after watching it alone. I wanted to see how they would play, because I was like, I think this is hilarious and like amazing. I don't know if other people will. So that was like a fun experience.
Yeah, our theater audience was fantastic.
Yeah,
we just like right. It's one of those movies where you watch it and you get to the end and you almost feel like this beautiful solidarity with everyone walking out of the theater with you, because you're like, we did this thing together.
That's my favorite theater going feeling always. Just like when you experience something, whatever the movie is, and like you kind of enjoy it together.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. The other moment we're talking about like fabulous Abigail moments, which I think is totally like, you could do a whole podcast just on fabulous Abigail moments, honestly. But one of the moments I love is when she is first flirting with Marsham. Am I saying his name correctly? Masham.
Yeah.
When she does the thing like, "Are you following me? Are you following me?" Which was so bizarre.
So cute.
So cute. And like, again, it's like one of these weird ass scenes that kind of encapsulates the whole story in a way, because it's like he says something and she says something saucy, and then we see her walking away and she makes that face like, oh fuck, did I just go too far?
Yeah.
She does this grimace where she's just like, oh, did I do it right?
Yeah.
And I love that we got to see that. I love that we watch her, because it would be less interesting if we just thought that she was like the most capable person in the world and was playing everyone with absolutely no self-doubt.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's her vulnerability that you see right then.
Exactly.
So I didn't read it as that. I didn't read it as vulnerability or wondering if she'd crossed a line. I read it as that, oh, great, now I've hooked him. Do I even want him?
Oh, interesting. Oh, well, that's another reading of that. That is absolutely also a reading of that works.
Yeah.
Because she takes such chances. Like I watched last night with my husband, and he was just like, what the fuck is she doing just hanging out in the queen's bedroom? And I'm like, I know. She's just like, she's an all or nothing person. She's just, she's got so much on the line. And that's the difference. Like, sure, having a relationship with a monarch is dangerous because they can chop your head off. We know this. Like, we're just not that far from like monarchs who are famous for that.
Well, and I think she realizes the reason that she does so many, big swings is that she knows that life probably can't get much worse. Like, if she gets cast out, she's already been out. So it's worth.
That is true.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like, why do I want to be just a servant in this place when I can maybe not be? And if I mess up, okay, worst case scenario, I'm just a servant again. I can do that.
Right. Worst case scenario, she's dead, but I don't even think but there was nothing she really did that would have done that. You're right. Everything would have brought her back to servant status or kicked out of the palace on the street, which again was something that she was already
where she was before she started. Yeah.
Right. She was already like keeping all of those options in mind, and she she took her shots over and over again, and I like that she wasn't perfect.
Right, same. I think the only time that she maybe could have like been harmed for one of her choices is when she got into the queen's bed naked
Yeah.
to take a nap. I was like, that could have probably gotten you.
That could have backfired.
That could have backfired a lot.
She knew by then.
I think
Or right before that, when she's just like, trying on the jewels and stuff, and like, like basically just when she went into the queen's chamber then.
And I also felt that when she was like, when we got the reveal and she was there in the bedchamber looking for a book or whatever it was that she was doing, just like, check it out.
Oh, I know. You're so positive she's going to get caught.
That's what I was going to say. Like that, and that's just because that's what happens in movies. Like everybody knows that. So that was a really interesting choice when they set this whole thing up and have her sneak through and the wood is creaking and we know she's going to get caught.
And she doesn't.
And she slips right out the door.
Yeah.
Well,
and then when you're breathing a sigh of relief, then she runs into Harley.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She'll go and ask, no, don't bother.
I love that. And again, we have this thing where it's like he pushes her into whatever, that ditch. So again, we have this thing where it's like he's playing at power. We think he's the powerful one there, but he's got nothing.
Yes, that's when at that point she knows, like, oh, I know this secret, and like these men can screw with me, but I've got like the ticket. So like I think at that point she's not as afraid anymore because she knows she could blackmail her if she really wanted to, and so or reveal this secret.
Well, she can't blackmail Sarah because clearly she tried to hint at that, and then Sarah's like, "I'll just shoot you now."
That was awesome, and it happened so fast. That was a great scene, actually. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love all of the shooting scenes very, very much. So yeah, the thing that's interesting to me in the first shooting scene is that Sarah says to her, "You desire comfort and favor above all else." So I would love to talk about this idea of flattery.
Sorry, who says that to whom?
Sarah says to Abigail, and I don't think she's wrong. She said, you've had these rough times. You desire comfort and favor above all else. Well, and then she says, I'll make a killer of you yet, which, that's where Sarah's underestimating her. Yeah. But she's like, sorry to tell you, already totally a killer. I'm not this vulnerable flower that you think I am, although I am vulnerable.
Right.
So I would like to talk about, I guess this maybe is not bringing us to the end of the podcast, but it does relate to the end of the movie. I want to talk about the need for flattery, the need for love and comfort, the need for praise, and all of like the need for being adored, I guess. Mm. And I feel like this is a thing that Sarah doesn't particularly need, but this is the commonality between Anne and Abigail, that they both need this.
I mean, I think Anne and Abigail definitely both like overtly need that.
Yeah.
But I would argue that Sarah does too, because of the jealousy that we get right off in the beginning.
Okay.
Certainly the favor. Like I think that the only vulnerability that we get from Sarah is that it's not so much her status, but her relationship with Anne is, absolutely, the title, the favorite, like being Anne's favorite, Anne's person that she calls, Anne's person that she waits for, the advisor, the consult, the courtesan, like being all of those things to Anne is very important to Sarah, I think. And when she doesn't have those, she seems lost, right? Yeah,
I think so too. I think that's kind of her identity almost, is being the favorite in all senses of the word. So without that, she's just a wife to some, nobleman or whatever, So I agree.
I guess my only argument against that is that Sarah actually, once she's in her own space, I think in particular that moment at the end when they're about to be banished and she just turns to him and says, I think I'm done living in England. Sarah seems to have, like, of the three of them at the end of the film, Sarah's the one that seems to be in the better emotional state. I don't know if she's in the better position, but she's the one of the three of them that actually seems to be, not in an enviable place because she's being banished from the country that she cares so much about. But she seems to be like, kind of sad, but okay.
I think because by this point, she's realized it's not worth it anymore. Like, I do think, that I still stand by the fact that I think her being the favorite mattered to her and was a very important thing to her and was a big part of her identity, and that was the most sacred thing to her at the beginning of this movie. And then she realized, like, this comfort level that I had is just going to be constantly screwed with now that Abigail's around, and I don't know if I care about that. Like, I think I don't want to say she has given up or whatever, but I think she's just realized, you know what, I have this other life and I'm protected and I'm married and I'll be okay. I think she's just, she's also a survivor and just probably the smartest out of any of them, just like probably realizing.
I do think she's the smartest,
Yeah, realizing that now she doesn't have to deal with this mess that they're going to have to deal with forever because that's just the circumstance of the palace. So, I don't know.
I think we're saying the same thing. I mean, I think that what I'm trying to say is that I think that Sarah is the only one of the three of them that might be capable of actually making that shift.
Yes. That is definitely true. It does, though, make me doubt how much she loved Anne, or just how much capacity she has for that kind of real vulnerable connection with people.
Yeah,
like, she's very independent.
I think she still loves her because I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I don't remember the exact letter that she writes. But
I was going to say that's what made
starts with "you cunt."
When she started writing all the letters,
and it's clear that she cares. I think she's just considered it. It's almost like a breakup where she's just realized like it's over, like and she's has coped.
Okay.
So I don't think that. It's like any breakup where it's like you might be happy that it's over and relieved and whatever, but you still carry some sadness about it. So I think she'll always love Anne and always mourn their time together, but she also knows, like, I have to.
That works for me.
Yeah.
Right. So I have a new question based on that then.
Mm-hmm.
So is what basically the film, like, because, I mean, we should talk about the ending in particular a little bit more in detail, but what if, and this totally works for me, what if the story is basically positing that the only way to be healthy, the only way to find a healthy place is to leave? Is that as long as you're in court, as long as you're in
to leave court, you mean?
Right. Is that if Sarah was invested in all of that, perhaps the fact that she was banished is like almost the best thing that ever happened to her, because that's what allows her to be, because I mean, again, I think we can talk about the ending. I think that it would be impossible to argue that Anne and Abigail, the ending of this film, says anything good about their prospects and their lives and the state that they're in. So the only one of them that's in an emotional state that could be arguably at all healthy is Sarah. So maybe if we all agree, and I do agree, that she did care very much about all these things, maybe what the film is telling us is the only way to escape this is to be physically taken out of court.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like flashing to like images of like Barack Obama on like a beach.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, holy shit, right?
It doesn't mean that he, that he didn't wear that responsibility well, or that it didn't matter or whatever. But the second that you're out of there, it's like, I'm going to the beach. So yeah, I kind of see it as the same thing, even though obviously the circumstances are different. She didn't choose necessarily to leave. I mean, I guess she kind of did, but
she didn't. No, she didn't really.
Yeah, she didn't fully. I think she could have maybe tried to put it. Yeah. But no, I think she's just accepted that, okay, this is it. And she's someone who knows how to make the best out of any situation, clearly. So I think she just accepts that it's over and now she gets to be free of it. And she's not the one trapped. I always think, like, to me, she wins kind of the whole thing.
Yeah, she does. Sure.
She's the winner in the end. So yeah, I agree with all of that.
Daphne, you said you kind of watched for this. Do you know offhand, because now I'm very curious, once Sarah leaves court, does she still get the fisheye lens?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I want to know.
Oh, now I want to know that too.
Because that would be
right.
explicit.
And we do actually have in this film wide angle and in addition to wide angle, like the super wide angle that becomes fisheye. Like we actually have gradations. We get both of those things.
Yeah.
I think maybe she's not in fisheye afterwards.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like all of the stuff when she's at her home in the end is very kind of standardly
right.
I think
so. Yeah.
Shit. That would
I'll have to look for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a huge key to the whole question of what the fisheye is doing.
Mm-hmm.
If Sarah doesn't,
so
and we don't have a lot of Sarah scenes afterwards, but we have Sarah meeting with what's his name, the Prime Minister. We have Sarah writing the letters, and then we have Sarah right at the end when the redcoats are arriving to tell them that they're banished.
And the writing the letters, I know, is an odd angle because we're way up high.
There's always
because this is another thing because we have so many angles. Really low angles. Mostly it's really low angles though. Mostly we're looking up at these people, which is again that kind of like that intrusive. You don't belong here, and also this is court, and you are peasantry. Like I felt that a lot. I felt that.
I don't remember who suggested this to me, but somebody suggested to me that the low angles looking up have to do with seeing the ceilings in this beautiful house that I've now forgotten which manor this is, but it's like a lot of things we know and love have been filmed in this house. And what's interesting is like you could just say, oh, that's just they just wanted to show the cool ceilings because they are really gorgeous. But I don't believe that about this film. That
no, for me it was part of that whole like being surrounded, and like it always felt oppressive to me. It always felt like I can't get out.
Yeah,
there's that also, but there's also
too much
just
pattern, too much
gravitas.
Oh, I like that.
That's what I see. Like,
detail, but yes.
Right? No, and there is. I mean,
I don't know what's happening.
No, but this gets into the costumes as well. Like, this is the environment of this house / palace. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to call it in the context of this film, but the environment they're in. They're in this physical environment that is very ornate. And I think that the up angles do that to us, that it's like constant reminder that they're not simply in a space, that they're in this space that has history.
There was also that beautiful, lovely nude that I kept on having behind Anne with that perfect body.
Right.
In juxtaposition to her.
Oh, shit.
Yes, to her gouge. So, that was beautifully done.
So, like, generally we could say that the space was in many ways oppressive to them as well because of what it was offering in terms of perhaps history, perhaps also in terms of body stuff, that the house was constantly reminding them that they were part of something historic, part of something, multi-generational, part of the monarchy.
Does that maybe speak also to Anne yelling out the window for the orchestra to stop? To that same kind of like, stop making everything so formal?
See, for me, that was children. For me, that was because it was children who were playing, and then she grabs the baby.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true. I thought that as well. I think the first time I watched that, I was confused by.
Yeah, I've only seen it once. So
yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
No, I thought of different things. I mean, also again, music. So we had twice. Where she kind of loses it in relation to music.
Yeah. That's true.
Also we could give specific triggers for her, but also we could say that this is really, Anne is not in her full mental capacity.
Right. I think any time that she gets to witness other people experiencing kind of a lighthearted joy that she can't have, I think that also seems to be a trigger. Like the musicians are just, out playing cheery music in the courtyard and just like enjoying this life that she can't enjoy. So,
right.
And the same with the dancing. Like, I don't know that that's specifically what those scenes are about.
No, that totally works as well as a connection between the two times where she really just kind of loses it suddenly.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense.
This is a little bit personal, but, I'm someone who deals with depression, and that is a very real feeling where I think sometimes you just think, like, why can't I feel okay? And why can't other people feel okay? So I think I saw that a lot with her, which is just this kind of going back and forth between these kind of manic phases that she has. Yes. But I think every once in a while when she's kind of lucid almost, that's when that feeling comes out of just, oh, everyone else gets to have this easy life and I never will. So.
Well, and it taps into so many different women's stories, like specifically women's stories that are tied to that, like the stories of depression, the stories of like, even though she's the monarch, she's the queen, but also the stories, again, I'm going to bring back to the story, kind of very gender specific stories of the bored housewife, like that Sarah's always busy doing something else and that she is so sequestered in her chamber. You get this feeling that she's just, it's so oppressive, her alone time. She's staring at the fire, or she's sitting on a chair, or she's lying in her bed, and she's just waiting constantly for something to happen, for someone to pay attention to her. I mean, just the level of her loneliness imposed by her physical ailments, but also by her station.
Yeah. And then when she is needed, she's so overwhelmed by it.
Yes.
When she's
That's
really
true. Like when she goes to Parliament and she either faints or chooses to pretend she's fainting. I'm not sure which one happens there, but
I think she fakes it.
She basically said that she fakes it, right?
Okay, okay.
Like, what
that was definitely my husband's take. That was absolutely my husband's take. He's like, I like her thinking here. She just figured out a way out.
That's the thing.
Right out of that.
I feel like that's a trope in movies too. I can't, like, off the top of my head think of any examples, but I feel like I've definitely seen other movies where women faint to get out of to like make decisions.
Like,
so.
Right. Well, and these women leverage all of the expectations men have. Like when they're with men, they will either strong arm the men or utilize the men's expectations of women. Like Abigail cries in front of Harley, and Harley's like, okay,
brilliant.
Okay,
don't cry.
Right.
Yes, that was a great moment too. That was a great gender moment. I'm surprised we didn't talk about that earlier.
Yeah, and I just love Nicholas Hoult in this movie. I think.
Oh my god!
Yeah. Why did I see even more things?
He's so much fun. He's just so much fun.
He was also not to bring my celebrity insight into this again, but
please do.
Both of the guys, Harley and Masham, Nicholas Hoult's Jennifer Lawrence's ex-boyfriend, who's also Emma Stone's like best friend. So
because they did X-Men First Class together, right? That's the only reason I knew him. I was like, I know this guy. I swear I know this guy. I looked him up. I'm like, no, I don't know this guy. X-Men First Class. Yes.
He's also the kid from About a Boy.
Yeah, he's the.
I haven't seen that though.
Oh my god, you have to see that.
Okay, put it on the list.
I love that movie.
I like the kind of meta-ness of Emma Stone just like messing with her friend's boyfriend.
I love that.
And Emma
Stone is such a delightful
Abigail
human.
At the same time. That's like super, super Abigail to be that person.
And I'm sure it was an accident, but I like to think maybe it was like a slightly meta choice.
That's so great. I love that. Okay, so I wanted to see, what your thoughts were about the last scene, like the last bit of the film. I think it's really interesting. I think the last bit is quite weird.
It was a little bit weird, but I found it really fitting too. It was, I thought, the loneliest part of the whole movie, which was gorgeous because in a movie that's all about people like trying to find that connection and what we were talking about earlier about desirability and being the favorite and being recognized, I suppose. Like of all of the scenes, even the first, when we first had Abigail, I don't know if you would call it seducing Anne, but whatever, manipulating Anne and getting into bed with Anne. We'll just call it that. When we first had Abigail
servicing Anne?
Servicing Anne is very good.
I do really love that scene. The pain.
The pain. It's so good. You're right. Oh my God. No, that was a great scene. But anyway, here at the end, we have that the loneliness and the desperation of both women.
Yeah.
And then it took me a minute to realize what was happening when they were superimposing, because first they superimposed the two women's faces. And then we had the rabbits come in, and at first it's just motion. And you can't quite, at least to me, it took a moment before I realized like what was even being brought into this scene. And when I realized it was the rabbits, I mean, there's something about matter being complicated and things just multiplying and things getting, complicated is the best word that I can think of.
Yeah, I think there's so much that you can read into that, the use of the rabbits in that moment, which is, everything's doubling and it's getting more and more complex and whatever, but it's also, the rabbits represent her children.
And her grief.
Yeah. And it just shows you this kind of cycle that she's now trapped in with Abigail. And she's trying to fill in the gaps that have been made by these dead children with this woman, kind of, and just this act that maybe makes her feel better but doesn't really make her feel better. And
yes.
So
and she's so disconnected from Abigail. Like, she's just kind of staring off into space, and she's so far, and she's also like objectifying Abigail pretty strongly in a way we haven't seen before in their relationship. And that anger that she feels for having sent Sarah away, and the guilt, all of it is there.
Right. It's just, and it's all coming together all at once in this like kind of jarring image, really.
Yes.
So we do think that Abigail is sexually servicing Anne in that last moment, right?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, because that's what "rub my legs" is shorthand for.
I actually read I have the script, and I was literally right before we started, was reading that scene, and it just says that she's rubbing her leg. It doesn't say that it's a sexual thing. So,
but you see in Anne's face, I feel like you see a mirror of the sexual pleasure.
But see, I almost think that
pleasure is the wrong word for that, but the sexual experience.
Right. And I might be reading into this, but I almost felt like the fact that maybe it wasn't sexual was even more humiliating in that moment, because now that aspect of it is lost.
Because then there's no power. Abigail has no power over Anne.
It's not, at this point, she's literally just a servant rubbing her leg. It's not like they have this kind of mutual thing that would come with the sexual experience. So,
well, and aside from whether there's a sexual aspect to it, what's interesting to me is that when Anne says, "I need to hold on something," she holds on to Abigail's head. And then for me, whether or not, regardless of what Abigail's actually doing to Anne's body, the visual language for me was that of when a man is holding onto a woman's head and forcing her to give him a blowjob.
Totally. Yeah, it does evoke that for sure.
Okay. Okay. I was curious. I was like, am I just the only
no.
who sees that? Or is that what's happening here?
And also there's that sense of whether or not Abigail wants to. Like, whatever Abigail wants doesn't matter. Like,
it doesn't matter.
It's all about Anne right now. And it's deeply uncomfortable and sad.
Well, and I think that's what's interesting is that we have all of these fascinating power plays throughout, and all of these moments where Sarah has stripped Anne of her agency and stripped her of the power of the monarchy. And it's so easy to believe that reality, the reality that Sarah presents for Anne, and or the reality that is true, that Anne is incapable of doing these things. And I think it's very interesting that the last moment, even though Anne is like at her lowest low, that she can barely control her own body and falls out of bed, and she's still, like, ultimately class prevails. Ultimately, the fact that she is queen rules all things, and that even though all of these power plays that we've seen and all of these ins and outs of the political landscape of this court and this environment, ultimately Anne is queen. She gets to order everyone around. She gets to force Abigail to service her in whatever way we think that servicing is happening. And I just think that's a really interesting end cap to all of it, because it's also tied in with the rabbits with her grief. So, like, yes, Anne ultimately is the power beyond every other power play, but she's also completely a servant to her own grief.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like the first time she's really fully wearing the role of queen, too. Like,
in the saddest way possible.
Right. Yeah.
She has tried so many times to assert that she's queen.
Right. I also think, I mean, this is kind of separate from all of that, but another thing about that scene is that it's the first time, like we were saying before, that this is probably the most conventional of Yorgos Lanthimos' movies. I think that kind of surrealist imagery in the very end is the closest it gets to really feeling like the rest of his filmography, where it's
totally
kind of abstract and and strange.
Right. Just like strange is his brand.
Yes. Exactly.
This is true. Strange with a purpose.
Right.
Is his brand.
Yes, absolutely.
No, it's totally true. For me, the last scene, again, back to what I had said about Sarah kind of in a way escaping from all of this, is that I feel like there is this bond between Anne and Abigail that they need to see themselves through the eyes of others in a way that Sarah maybe doesn't.
Right.
And so that the sadness, just the real true tragedy of this last moment between them, where they're together in this room, but clearly so apart and so at odds and so ready to do damage to each other, that, you know, you see Abigail ready to crush a bunny, and you see Anne ready to demean Abigail in this way, that you see, I feel like it's a statement on that kind of obsession with flattery and self-flattery.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
That feels very poignant. It just felt stronger than a lot of other versions of stories that are saying something about that. It just really just felt very raw. Yeah,
I think raw is a good way to describe pretty much all of the sexual energy in this movie.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, very human, very not pretty.
Yeah.
And yet very sexual. I mean, it's very sexy, a lot of what goes on in this film, but it's not pretty sexy.
Right.
No. And it's not romantic in any way.
No.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, you know what the one romantic moment is? When they're in that mud bath. Even though Sarah's doing a power play,
that's a good point.
Even though she's doing a power play in that moment, it's romance still, of them with their like pseudonyms that they have for each other.
Old jokes, yeah.
That is the moment that really works for me as romance.
Yeah, that's a good agree. Point.
Yeah.
Even, again, totally a power play. But again, these three women, nothing exists in their lives outside of the realms of power.
Mm-hmm.
Also, speaking of the nicknames they have for each other, those were actually in real life the nicknames that those two used so that they could write love letters to each other. And in case anyone found them, it would be with those fake names. So
what is it?
I can't remember what it is.
Morley and
it's like,
I didn't know that, and I meant to look that up, and I was like, Wikipedia was definitely not going there with me.
Yes.
Wikipedia is not interested in this part of their story.
It's Mrs. Freeman and Mrs. Morley.
Right, Freeman. I knew it was something Morley. With free. Okay. Fascinating. See, now I just want that story. I want to know how they came up with these names. Where did these names come from? Were they from literature? Were they from people they knew when they were young? I would love to know that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like those two names, I kept thinking about them in terms of like a literary construction, what they might mean, because one of them has the word free in it, but yeah.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, of course.
Right. But if they're actually the names that they chose, then who knows?
Yeah.
It might.
But I do like free and more.
Mm-hmm.
Those are both very good.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, shit. Right.
Yep.
We can be lesbians because of free and more. I like it.
Yep, I like it.
Exactly.
That totally works for me. Does not matter what the real story is. That's my story.
There you go. Yep.
Love it.
All right. So, favorite things.
Favorite things. I'm going to say, especially since it wasn't nominated for an Oscar, that the sound is my favorite thing. The sound editing and the score are fucking brilliant.
Agreed. My favorite thing is when Mr. Harley, or whatever, when Harley is talking to Abigail at night the one time, and he uses the word construct.
Oh my God, that was the other one. Right. I was trying to think earlier when we were all laughing about how when she said, like when she puts her tongue inside of me or whatever, and I was like, there was another time that I laughed really hard and then apologized to the person next to me. It was like, I'm sorry that delighted me so much. But it turns out that construct is a thing that I'm super into, and you should call me that. I don't know.
Okay.
Great word.
Secondarily, also dedicating this portion of the podcast to Christine because she also just lost it about that.
Oh my God.
And I remember you guys knew I had the script, so you asked because you forgot what the word was. So you asked me to look it up, and I did, and ever since then I have not been able to stop thinking of that word.
I just love it because, usually it would be love struck. So I just love that love struck became construct, because this world would so be that.
Right.
Yes. Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah. Perfect. Just this movie is just
good consonants too. It's
crude
just so
in exactly the correct way. Just in the perfect way for the world of this story.
Absolutely.
I love it. Okay. My favorite thing is I can't believe I didn't manage to weave this into one of the other conversations. I mean, I have many favorite things, and definitely the tongue thing is my favorite thing in a way, but we already talked about that, so I'll choose the one we didn't talk about, which is the wedding night.
Oh, yes.
Abigail's wedding night, where she's scheming. And again, I'm really happy, Liz, that you brought up this whole thing about people being centered in the frame, because that frame so worked for me, that we have Abigail just absolutely centered in the frame. And we have, oh my God, it's so evil that I keep forgetting his name. It's,
Masham.
Masham, thank you. Then we have Masham. What was these? I don't remember what his terminology was, but hard as a rock and on his wedding night. And we have him over on the side behind her while she's absent-mindedly giving him a hand job while she is only thinking about Sarah.
Right.
All she can think about is Sarah and what Sarah might be doing, and Sarah's scheming, and Sarah, when she was going to be done being poisoned, and all of these things, and what might happen. And she's completely occupied with Sarah while, this thing that we could have been led to believe was her great goal, which was to marry and become a lady again. And that's just literally on the side of the frame while she absentmindedly gives him a hand job and then just rubs her hand on her dress or whatever.
Yes, gross.
Because she's just I have bigger fish to fry than you and your erection right now, dude.
Amazing.
I know. That's also one of these moments that's a snapshot that absolutely expresses the tone of the whole film.
Yeah, for sure.
I completely agree.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies. Since I've seen this film, 2 months ago, I've been dying to talk about it. So thank you for indulging me. This was just so much fun. And
it was. Yes. Thank you, Lindsay, so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, Lindsay, thank you so much. Tell our listeners where they can find you on the internet.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Lindsay Romaine. And then you can also find all my writing on Nerdist.com, which has a brand new website. So check it out.
All
Excellent.
Right.
Yes, I cannot recommend more Lindsay's writing, because you are, in fact, one of my favorite writers on the internet.
Yes.
Oh,
no question.
You. Thank you so much.
Alrighty. So yes, you can tweet at us at Just Say Podcast using the hashtag Can I Just Say. We would love to hear what everyone's thoughts about this film, because kind of as we said all along, we're I feel like all of our opinions are half baked at this point, and I feel like we're going to continue to learn stuff about this film as we go along. I personally am rooting for it to get some Oscars. I hope it gets some Oscars. We're just before the Oscars. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. It would just make me happy. I would just feel like a movie that I care about won some awards, which would be nice. That would be a good feeling. I haven't had that in a long time.
Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time from Common Room Radio, I'm Elizabeth Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive. Sorry. Oh no, I have the hiccups now. This is very bad for podcasting. Hiccups.
Amazing.
A hiccup and a snort. This will end beautifully.
I never get the hiccups.
Oh, she sometimes gets the hiccups. Also, Daphne, oh my God, Michael Jordan, what the fuck was that? Oh, I know I have the flu, but I'll go ahead and win the NBA finals, whatever the fuck he did in the 90s. Anyway, your hiccups went away and you became fucking brilliant and eloquent like a goddess. In awe. In awe.
And I'm drunk.
Yeah.
Super
right,
drunk.
Lindsay? That was amazing. You went from literal head on the desk hiccuping to I don't even know what that was. I just feel like it's so perfectly expressed. The monarchy and the isolation of Anne. It did though.
Just Say Podcast is a Common Room Radio production. For more information and our other shows, visit commonroomradio.com. To show your support, pledges of as little as $1 a month can make a big difference. Visit patreon.com/commonroomradio to pledge support and access bonus features that are just for patrons. And join the conversation by using the hashtag #CanIJustSay and follow us on Twitter @JustSayPodcast. We request that you keep your tweets respectful and positive, and you can always email us at podcast@commonroomradio.com. Thanks for listening.